potential ways to go wrong. And I think that's actually how MPL has given up some points.
Okay, here we go, guys. Seatbelts fastened. 30 minutes of bullet to determine who faces Magnus Carlsen in the finals. Will MVL complete his incredible run at the SEC? The first game features a anti-Sicilian, another Rosalimo type structure. We've had quite a few positions, Casa, where Hikaru has targeted, actually where both players have targeted this weak D5 square.
Yeah, it's not all about the Benjamins. It's all about the D5 square, and that's what we're going to see here again. This knight went on a tour de France to get to that E3 square, and it's to essentially buttress the control of that square and that other knight on D5. So, wow, bishop E5.
Whoa.
That is a tricky one. And then the knight will eventually dart back. That is not something you see every day.
Hikaru going for checkmate with the knight on F5, but his knights could get tangled in the mass of pieces and pawns. Knight E8 is the very heads-up defensive move, and Hikaru said, never mind, let me dial it back. All right, peace, yeah. Suing for peace. MVL is suing for war on the king side.
And here we go. The position's about to open up, and I think it will actually slightly favor black, who's a little bit ahead in development. If that knight on E8 moves, the rooks are connected. Oh, no.
Terrible move.
F5.
And he's allowed a completely positive transformation. Look at how weak that F6 pawn is. Queen H4, Knight G4.
Queen H4, Knight G4.
That was shocking.
And that's bullet, so there's still plenty of game. But yeah, F6 is chronically weak.
And Anvil just forgot to take on E4. He allowed Hikaru to lock up the king side. Now a big moment. Rook F2, such a careful move, preventing the bishop from dropping into E2. And now an all-out assault on the D pawn, on the F pawn. MVL has to play perfectly to keep himself in the game.
And we're probably going to see some type of rook E3 dynamic, if I had to guess. But knight H6 is also an idea. All right, the rook lift another way with rook F3.
Maxime trying to engineer some counterplay on the queen side. He's doing his best, but he's too slow. Oh, man, knight takes E5. Goodbye. Knight G6. Ugh.
Yeah, there's a lot of things in ruin here, and yeah, this queen is in peril.
Oh, by the way, you could have taken the bishop. Hikaru finding a different path. This is going to be resign time. Rook E7 and it's over.
Knight F6.
Bishop G7 mate.
And Bob's your uncle. That is enough.
Exactly. And that was a concerning game for Maxime. He mixed up the move order there in the middle game. You can't do that against Nakamura. He will punish you every time. Folks, it's 0-0 with 27 minutes remaining.
Yeah, and here we go. A4, stop B5. We have, again, this kind of closed structure. F5 is the break that black will try to organize. White will be is kind of doing a good job of holding it off thus far. H3, covering G4. So far, so good.
And unlike the previous game, it's a lot harder for black to actually achieve F7, F5. The bishop on D3, the knight on G3, and the queen all combining to prevent it. MVL beats Hikaru to the punch. Both players over a minute on their clocks. But this, a much more positive transformation of the position than the first time they reached this structure.
Yeah, and blockading the E5 square seems very unrealistic now. If white could have lifted that E5 bishop with something like knight F3, it's going to be problematic. So white is definitely the better side here.
I like F6 though. Hikaru now trades on F4, making it very difficult for Maxime to smash through in the center with E5. Now, in some situations, white could even sack with E5 and then put a knight on E4, but that's very hard to calculate out in a bullet game. I would start playing on the queen side maybe with B4. Try to induce more weaknesses.
Yeah, I was thinking A5 was the idea with queen D2, but maybe that allows B5, so this is maybe more prudent.
That E4 pawn was hanging briefly.
Indeed it was, and just in the nick of time, it was missed. So here we go, A5, breaking up the queenside structure.
Great call, Casa, and I think B4 is coming next. It's not far behind. Whoa, this has to be losing. At knight F3 instantly.
Knight F3, clutch, very clutch.
Oh my gosh, knight E6, wrong move order. He should have taken the knight first. He should have taken the knight first and then played knight E6. Now he just gives up another pawn. Knight D2.
And this is a bit too much. Yeah, knight D2. Maybe bring the queen back. Bring the queen back. No, you can't allow this knight to be kicked.
This is what I'm talking about, Casa. He had 46 seconds. He played way too quickly and made a very committal decision without thinking it through. And now he is paying the price. Hikaru's pawns running up the board with furious effect. Here comes the knight. Everything unfurls. And Hikaru will take the second game as well.
Yeah, and this armada of pawns is going to be a bit too much to blockade. This knight on g1 is so poor.
Okay, still trying as MVL, still poking and prodding, and a check on b2, and Hikaru maneuvers his queen deftly back to e5, and these pawns are going to decide the game.
Savvy, just recognizing that when the queens come off the board, it's going to be hard to navigate. So you can't take just yet, but there's the consolidation is happening.
Rook takes d3 there was a big miss. MVL could have given himself a chance, but he's lost hope. He's lost hope. He's resigned the game.
Knight c2 and e3.
And now he's literally resigned.
And just like that, Nakamura has totally erased any deficit. And is he in the lead? I believe he is. A point up, just like that.
He's a point up, and what's even more concerning, the way that Maxime is losing these games. The first game, he makes a sloppy move, mixes up the move order. Second game, he plays too quickly, again mixes up the move order. And in that second game, he got everything that he wanted out of the opening. Once Hikaru starts feeling confident, he starts running away with the match. So MVL, I would go so far as to say, Casa, that this is almost a must-win game for Maxime. He has to stem the bleeding before it gets out of control.
I do not like this king on h7. It looks a little suspect to me, just with the bishop on c2 bearing down on it. And so I would like to solve that expeditiously. Maybe something like queen f6, king h8. Hold on. What is going on here?
Well, let me disabuse you of the notion that there is any way to attack the king on h7. Maybe there is. Is there knight takes c5 here? I think there might have been. Rook takes b7.
H6.
Rook takes b7 and queen takes h6. And you called
oh my goodness.
And another blunder for Maxime.
Look, it's a lot easier for us to basically be armchair generals here. It is so hard to read and react with this speed. So I empathize completely.
When you're playing Hikaru, nothing describes that experience quite like sitting in front of him virtually and playing a game. The speed with which he poses threat after threat after threat, he overwhelms you with his whole board awareness. And look at what he's doing. Knight h2, kingside move, c4 in the center, on the queen side, laterally, diagonally, vertically. It's crazy. Knight g4.
And at some point, queen takes h6 is going to be annoying. So knight g4 is more precise now, but queen takes h6 has been available for a minute.
And queen takes g6 will lead to resignation. And there's a 2-point lead, ladies and gentlemen.
Oof.
This is what he does. This is Hikaru Nakamura in a nutshell. And this ultimately, Casa, apart from all the other reasons, is why he's almost impossible to face in the SEC. Because the match can go perfectly. You can be up 3 points, and it doesn't frickin' matter. He's going to come back in the bullet, inevitably.
And MVL really needs to stem the tide right now. He needs to get on the board in this segment. And it's going to come down to reading and reacting a little bit better than he has right now. He's trying to trade on e5 and get a position that's a little bit more stable, so there's no type of kingside attack. But I don't believe you're gonna flex your muscles in these types of symmetrical positions. Whoa! He missed rook d2.
I'm gonna show this really, really quickly. Rook takes d2 would have won the game on the spot. It would have garnered 2 pieces for a rook, and then bishop takes c4. This is a classic, and Hikaru wasn't even thinking about it. Rook takes d2. You can take with the bishop. You can take with the queen. Big miss there. That would have given him a 3-point lead. We go back to the live position, and this is looking pretty good for Maxime, who's generating some queenside play here. But look at Hikaru. Look at what he's doing. The King's Indian style attack will strike again.
I would go rook d1, trade some more pieces, and basically dim any attacking chances that Naka has. I would, go c5 now, and
a5.
And then a5 and try to break through. Although g4, g3 is happening very quickly.
And
c6.
Oh, trade the rooks maybe.
Yeah, I would trade the heavy pieces, all of them, and you're going to have great chances on the queen side in the long term.
And in the long term, Casa, to second your point, you could have later on some sort of, bishop sack on b6. That c6 pawn could be transformed into a passer. But for all of that to happen, you have to not allow g3.
And he's allowed it. And now queen h6 is going to be an issue. Although you have ideas still to trade the queen, and that is going to be your salvation here. I think you can try to press this one for a little while if you're smart.
Yeah, you need to get your king to d3, your knight to c4. I think Hikaru is just holding the fort, though. I think this is a fortress, and this will take some more time off the match clock, but at least Maxime is likely to get on the board. At least he's likely to get at least half a point.
I think this is a tough one to defend still. This knight can redeploy to d5, maybe start to chisel away. There will be a5 as well. It still requires some work.
But careful there. That knight can get to h4 before you know it. I've lost so many of these endgames to Hikaru where you're sure it's a 2-result game, and then his knight appears up your grill, and you're like,
Oh my goodness.
I found a way to lose.
It's crazy that the knights kind of counterbalance each other themselves, right, with this pressure on G2 and A7. My goodness.
You're right, though, Kasa. Maxime is trying. Maxime is trying, but he doesn't have inroads. Knight takes F3 there was threatened. It's a draw. It's a fortress.
You've convinced me. The knight on F7, the black knight constantly counterbalances white's own counterplay with these sacrifices. So, yeah, this is a fortress. And the question for me is, how long will Naka want to play this out?
He's still at 45 seconds, so hypothetically he could bleed out, another 90 seconds, 2 minutes. We're not at the stage in the match. Knight takes C5.
Knight takes C5. Knight takes C5. He missed it. And bishop C3 check.
And you have no chances. If you miss these tactics with 15 seconds left, you don't have a single chance. We see the eval bar rising. It's so much easier for us. He missed an easy tactic. But nobody's tapping Maxime on the shoulder and saying, listen, Hikaru just blundered. Knight takes Bishop D6. Is that a move? Is Bishop D6 a move? It is!
And then he finds it. He finds it.
He finds the impossible move and missed the easy one. And I think he might be winning.
And Knight takes B6 and Knight D5 after Bishop D8 is just curtains.
B6, C7.
And Bishop D8, Knight D5. Bishop D8's the only move. And then these pawns will escalate up the board like an escalator. It is it.
Not yet, though, because the knight is heading back to E6. He pushed the wrong pawn.
No,
he pushed
B6?
the wrong pawn. He had to go B6, and the C pawn would have promoted.
And now the problem is this king on E2 is going to be tethered to knight sacrifices, so you can't actually support the B pawn.
King D3, knight takes F3, wins for black. Maybe B6, but Maxime has to be careful at this point. Oh my gosh, knight F7 at the right moment.
I would not have even gone for this transformation, frankly. I think this one is definitely more favorable to black.
And it's going to take more time off the match clock. Maxime is trying to make territorial gains on the queen side. Can he go King D5
King D5,
there?
King D5, King D5. That was the move. He had to use opposition and just sack the knight and get those 3 pawns. That would have been definitely worth it.
And now more time is disappearing off the match clock. I think Hikaru is almost flirting with...
Opposition is going to be tragic here. This king is more active. The knight is more active. This is very dangerous.
How are we even talking about black making gains here? This is getting scarier and scarier.
93.
He's getting his king.
It's triangulation now. The king would mosey in King C4.
No, Casa. The king king needed to get to G5. The king could have gotten by force to G5, and the white king can't cross the Rubicon. Hikaru misses an opportunity there. Still some chances for black, though.
My goodness.
What is this game? And it's still going. It's still going.
All right. I don't love that knight on H5. My goodness. All right, now we're gonna sack the knight for the 2 pawns if allowed. But King G2, Knight H4, and then King H3, Knight takes G3.
Knight G5, and you're hanging on by the skin of your teeth. This would have been an even bigger disaster if Maxime had lost it. What on earth did we just see? And it's still, Hikaru is still trying.
Knight F6. Okay, you can do it that way.
116 moves and counting. And now the bleeding begins.
Yeah. He's the furling and unfurling of hands, the understanding that every second counts now with the 2-point lead. That's what's happening right now.
The record for the longest SCC game was set in the previous match we covered together, Casa, between Hikaru and Fabi, over 200 moves. So this one didn't come close. But for a bullet game, boy, did that take a while. Still a 2-point deficit for Maxime, but he's missing too many tactical opportunities, I think, to have a realistic shot right now.
And I'm actually really surprised that we're getting a Caro here, because it's not MVL's wheelhouse per se. But okay, he has a very reasonable position thus far.
Careful there. That rook on E1 was under fire. And looks pleasant for Hikaru to start off the game.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the rooks are connected. We know about that. Maybe Queen F3, getting out of any pins.
Obviously, Bishop G5. Oh no, and it's starting to. The wheels are starting to come off here. I think for Maxime.
Yeah,
D5
Queen H4
even
is an idea. D5 is an idea. Rook lifts are now on the offing. Rook E3 is very scary looking. Ooh,
You
d5.
can't give this to Hikaru. Bishop d5, bishop e7, and knight g6 is going to pick up the queen, and more brilliant tactics for Nakamura.
Oof, and now...
Take it.
Yeah.
And
yeah, bishop takes d5, knight takes d5, bishop takes e7, and then, yeah, you win material.
And it's not just about what he's playing, Casa. It's when he's pausing. He senses that this is a critical moment. He takes the time, and he calculates this perfectly. Exquisite tactical play. And I don't think Black can hold the draw here in a bullet game.
Yeah, the problem is basically the queenside pawns. If the queenside pawns were somehow off the board, you could say there'd be some fortress potential, but those queenside pawns, you see rook b8 curling into a ball, they're going to be so difficult to defend, and that's going to basically decide the game.
Well said. It's not the material advantage per se, it's the fact that the queen is better in this type of situation with pawns on both sides. But the Caro-Kann, Casa, in a blitz game, you can play unfamiliar openings and you have time to improvise. My theory is that in bullet, you always should stick to what you know best. I vote Sicilian is a better choice for Maxime, and I think this game proved it.
Yeah, this position very quickly became the Carol Can't. So hopefully we won't see that in future games, because the clock is dwindling quickly, and we're going to get under 10 minutes very soon.
Still some chances here for Maxime, and Hikaru dropped his rook back. He got cold feet. I thought that he should have gotten rook g5 and f5. Now, I think MVL has achieved a fortress.
Yeah, this is the best possible version. The pawns fixed on f4 and h4, just allowing the bishop to have great comfort. Why is Black pushing all these pawns still? I'm a little confused. Okay, basically, it seemed to work out, but I was worried the b5 pawn would be picked off.
It is going to be picked off, and that was a completely inexplicable decision for Maxime. No, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Leave your pawns where they are. Luckily for him, he has the heads-up decision to get his bishop to b3, but look at what's happening now. His king is going to get opened up.
Tough decision. Yeah,
so
tough
hard
decision.
to defend.
How do you deal with this? Yeah. All right, I think as long as the white king can't cross the Rubicon, it's going to be fine. But there's going to be a lot of clock wasting here, and that's going to be the most important factor rather than even the game result.
Be still, my beating heart. g5, king g6. What a defensive idea for Maxime. And don't laugh, Casa. If Hikaru gets a little bit too cute and he loses both of his kingside pawns, Black is going to be playing for the win. White is going for checkmate, but once the f pawn is picked off, oh, he blundered the h pawn.
And it's still going to be, I think it's still going to have great chances to hold, just because the white king is going to be hard to get involved, but it's not an easy hold. And okay, the king is moseying up to h4. I do not think you could just sit on the... Yeah, I do not think you can sit with the rook on the 6th rank and hold this.
And bishop d1 there. He had a chance to pick off the h-pawn briefly. I think he's just moving back and forth, and I don't see a way for white to force Zugzwang. Hikaru trying to milk all the clock right now.
Maybe queen b8, queen f8 at the right moment.
Aha.
Just to stop the king g7 idea.
God, another marathon game. This match is just the gift that keeps on giving, isn't it?
Yeah, and again, this queen, I think if it gets to f8, is going to be very, very annoying to deal with.
Oh my gosh. Okay, still trying. Hikaru trying to find the right arrangement of the king and the queen, but the black rook has too many squares. There's h6, but that doesn't really help. Now h6 falls.
All right, and now you just want to get to the next game, because there's no real winning chances here if you're Black, but Naka's going to just have his fun and take off as much game clock as possible.
And listen, Hikaru knew that he was going to lose the h-pawn when he pushed h6. That was not a winning attempt. That was a move to prolong the game, and we're at 100 moves again. We'll check this, but I think this is the first time in SCC history that we've had 2 consecutive 100-plus move games, and we're nowhere near the game finishing. It's 107 moves. We might go all the way to the 50-move rule.
Yeah, and it's funny because, again, we were commentating a match together last week where Naka actually broke the record for longest SEC match with, I think, 204 moves, if I'm not mistaken.
Incredible. We're at 120, and obviously the players are just shuffling back and forth. Black could send the f-pawn up the board, but White always has perpetual in his pocket. I feel like we just started the bullet segment, and we've already gone through 20 minutes. With only 10 minutes remaining, the margin now becomes thinner and thinner. MVL has to win the next game.
And just to be clear, MVL's not going to push the f-pawn because it means a prolonging of the match. There's no real winning chances. Smartly cutting off the king here on e6 as well. You do not want to allow the king to even get close to sniffing the f8 square. So that's what's going on here.
And this is the metagame that is played by Hikaru. We're at 136 moves. He probably counted how many moves he needed to reach the 50 move roll. I think they're at that point, and now he's going to bleed the rest of his clock down. They're somehow under 10 minutes. There we are, 137 moves, and still a 2-point lead. This is the biggest game of the match for Maxime, needless to say.
No question about it. And I think he's going long because he realizes he needs to win.
And Hikaru, he loves this opening across all time controls. He's very, very good at the ideas here. And I already don't like the way this is going for Maxime. I don't like what he's doing. Hikaru with a very compact position.
A4.
Oh, no, this is MVL playing very poorly this game. Knight b6 and bishop a6, and he's dropping everything.
Too many targets, yeah. D5, E2 is hanging. Oof, E3 is loose.
Too fast?
Everything. You made this observation, and it's been so true throughout, actually. And again, it's just a testament to your bullet experience that you do not need to go 100 miles per hour the first 20 moves.
It's just that as MVL gives up the exchange, he's going 300 miles per hour. And it's so hard because these players are so experienced at 1+0. It's easy to underestimate how much the increment changes the tenor of the game, and it changes it tremendously because you can't just play on the clock anymore. Even with a single second on the clock, Hikaru is going to win the game if he's got a winning position. What's infuriating here, Casa, is that White cannot move the knight because of the lateral pin against the bishop. Hikaru brings his queen back, and this might be the match. Unless MVL wins the next 3.
And it's crazy, too, because when F5 did come on the board for White, you felt like there was a whisker of counterplay. And, Naka basically put on the fire extinguisher with the quickness. I mean, it was like so quickly. I mean, everything just got doused. And it's a 3-point lead.
Heads up move by MVL to resign. He had to do that. This is where we need to remind you folks that if the game begins and there's even a single second left on the match clock, that game counts for the score. But in order for us to even cross that bridge, first of all, Maxime has to win 2 games.
Yeah, and the moment is now. And again, Black is, Naka's carving out more real estate with his pawns. He has a bit of a space advantage, and I don't see a ton of problems for Black right now.
And again, he's rushing the opening, and again, he gave up the b5 pawn.
King a7.
Okay, still a good position for Hikaru. Even though he had a free pawn he could have grabbed. Look at Black's king. Look at Black's h-pawn. In a bullet game, this is a very hard position to play. I would try to get the queens off the board here at all costs.
Yeah, 100%. That's okay. Knight f5 is now a massive threat. Queen f3 or queen f3 or queen g5.
Actually, queen g5, king f8, and once Black gets his king to safety, the position might start turning around.
Yeah, this knight h4 is a little bit out of pocket there, but yeah, now it's corrected and coming up here. Queen d8.
Oh my God, what a throw!
That might have been the match right there.
It's like there was nothing to worry about in the first place. That's the sense you get from Hikaru. It's like this was all planned out to raise the intrigue and then bring the hammer down when push came to shove.
Man, it's amazing because again, MVL has played a little bit too fast in this time control. It's insane to say that because it's 1+1, but it feels like he's just played too quickly.
And none of these criticisms are in any way meant to suggest that MVL hasn't played an incredible match, which he has, an incredible match, an incredible run. Hikaru's bullet speaks for itself, but our job as commentators is still to diagnose the reasons behind the loss. That isn't Hikaru being Hikaru. And I think the biggest reason for MVL's bullet misfortune isn't his lack of bullet skill. It is precisely that the first 15, 20 moves of every game have been significantly rushed. He's getting off on the wrong foot, and Hikaru is steering the game into territory where he's just a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, and it honestly begs the question for me, if you could take timeouts, would it make a difference? If he had like a coach's corner and could essentially get that problem diagnosed, would the adjustment have made a major difference? Tough to say, but yeah, it's hard to imagine, even if MVL wins the rest of the games, that you're going to have four actually full games to play.
Yeah. And this one is going to drag on for a long time. Hikaru isn't worse here with that monster knight on e5. Maxime hoping against hope now to create chances, but I think he's merely throwing oil onto the fire. Now he's losing this game as well. AB. Oh, God. Another one in the can.
Also does the trick, and basically all of black's pieces are better than the white counterparts. So that knight on e5 was just a total octopus knight, and all the pawns are on white pawns are on light squares. Where white has a light squared bishops, the coordination isn't there, and the knight could be picked up and put on c6. Slightly different story.
You don't know that rule where you can make one illegal move per game.
There are some parks in New York City where you might get away with that, but
very good.
Not in the SEC.
Listen, you look at the score after Hikaru picks up this game, and it's 15.5, 10.5, and you say, that's kind of what I expected. It's kind of a smooth win for the favorite, and you have no idea that MVL has been leading for most of the match, could have been up by 3 going into the bullet, and Hikaru erasing a deficit that seems like it was in another universe. It seems like this was honestly preordained.
Yeah, when it rains, it pours. I mean, that's also kind of the thing. We saw it yesterday with Magnus and Wesley. There is a tilt dynamic, and again, you need to pick up wins. So it actually increases the likelihood that it gives your opponent even more leeway to pick them up themselves. So that's part of the problem.
But this is what's amazing about the SEC. It's the bullet there's 30 minutes of bullet and 90 minutes of 5+1 as Hikaru sacrifices the rook back. Not sure what motivated that decision. Oh, rook c4. He's going to pick up a4, and he's going to take more time off the match clock. But the 30 minutes of bullet are always a chance to come back. Go ahead, Casa.
Danya, the reason it was not actually totally lost was there was f takes e3, rook f1, rook f5 mate. That was why f takes e3 was so important, I think.
And it's a complete blowout in the bullet. MVL hasn't won a single game. He barely eked out one draw. It's 7-1. 7-1 in the bullet.
Yeah, and again, if MVL wasn't trailing, the score wouldn't basically be this lopsided. I would contend. I'd say that his need to win is something that Naka could truly take advantage of in a way that is just a little abusive. It feels that way because you basically have to keep playing and try to win these games, and sometimes when you're trying to win unwinnable situations, it just cascades.
And an incredible run by MVL this year in the SEC. He can hang his hat on competing on equal terms, on better terms with Hikaru in the first two segments. But at the end of the day, Hikaru's incredibly well-rounded skill set, the fact that he plays equally well across all three time controls, maybe even better as the match progresses, that is the decisive factor. And that is why Magnus Carlsen is the only person in the universe with a similar skill set who can compete with Hikaru in the SEC, and they will do so in the SEC final. H5, by the way, would have won the game, Casa, because knight e3 ran into a fork, but it's a completely moot point at this point.
Yeah, and there are sometimes moral victories, so I would like to see MVL not stay on 10.5 for the remainder of the match, but this H-pawn is moseying up the board, softening up that king side. How many games have we seen H6 played, honestly? I mean, it feels like it happens over and over again, and the practical chances are just massive every time.
And we might also get a smothered mate there. Rook g8 was threatened. Now rook takes e8. And is there some sort of... Are there shenanigans with the knight getting from f7 to e5? I think there might be. I would trade those rooks. And with a minute left on the match clock, it's official. It's over. And Hikaru... Oh, what a move. You can't take the rook.
Yeah, queen c1, king h2, knight f7.
Whoa. Brilliant. Oh, rook f8, queen takes f8.
Yeah. Playing for the crowd. And he Nakamura just on camera is like, oh, man, he didn't go for it. He's just disappointed.
Again, rook f8, queen takes f8. This time with a different mate on f7. Rook e6, queen f8. Rook e6, queen f8 is even more beautiful. Now it's a threat. And he can do it! Queen f8!
Queen f8, queen f8, queen f8! He sees it! Knight f7!
And MVL applauding. He applauds. And what else can you do, Casa, but applaud?
Yeah, that golf clap was merited. We all could applaud at home as well. That was nice.
It's 8-1.
This is probably the last game of the bullet segment. But wow, Just incredible Queen of Fate move to nearly finish things.
I can't believe that it's a 6-point match. And if Hikaru wins this final game, he will have won by 7 points. That's blowout territory. And he was down going into the bullet.
Yeah, again, it's truly amazing how quickly things can change. And I'm just reminded time and time again that this is really hard. And holding a lead against someone of the caliber of Nakamura is just really difficult. And momentum plays such a big role. So, you have to catch up to speed, get used to the new terms and conditions faster. And unfortunately, MVL did not read those terms and conditions.
He did not. And I've played Hikaru thousands of times in the blitz time control, and I've played him in classical. You feel his strength, but then when you face him in the bullet, as I've experienced in the last few bullet brawls, it's like a cannonball. The speed, the accuracy, as I said, the just constant threats that he makes on all sides of the board, and he might go down in this final game. It makes it so overwhelming to try to stay afloat. You start blundering, you start losing the thread, and just like that, he turns it around. MVL, though, he might score the honor goal here with an extra exchange in the final game.
Yeah, and it does, again, seem so wild for this to be, as you mentioned, almost... It feels like it was not a close match. It totally was. It totally was. So I'm almost, for folks that didn't watch this one, man, they're going to have a hard time understanding and believing us when we say, well, this was not what it seemed.
I mean, it's like a 20-point basketball game, except the 20-point lead was built in the last 3 minutes of the fourth quarter. In Hikaru Nakamura, it is official. He defeats the Frenchman with 3 names in a vintage, epic SCC match. An incredible bullet performance. And he will face, for the second year in a row, Magnus Carlsen in what has become one of the most iconic matchups in modern chess history. Casa, this is the final score. That final segment says it all.
Yeah, folks, 8-2 in the 1+1, and we now are going to be able to say we're going to get the El Clasico of Hikaru versus Magnus. Everyone wanted to see it, and we're going to see it, but the journey to get here